So a couple of years ago, I got a phone call out of the blue from Shannon Goldwater telling me about an organization she'd started due to her and several founding mothers' experiences trying to feed their children. She'd started Popsicle to hopefully develop at that point in the Arizona region better services for children with feeding disorders. I learned very quickly that this group of mothers were not only passionate, but they were incredibly capable, and they had the unique ability to pull professionals in from around the country who were leaders in the thinking about feeding disorders, sometimes who had never been in the same room together, and they pulled us all together to start to talk about what is the best approach for caring for children with feeding disorders. I can tell you the first conference we had, there was a lot of good-natured argument, which continues because none of us know truly what is the right way for dealing with any particular child. And we do it a lot by gut instinct from our experience, but there's not a lot of data out there to tell us really what works and what doesn't work. And where there was, they had people present the data and talk about it, talk about their experiences. They had a lot of very gifted clinicians in the room that had worked with thousands and thousands of children combined. And we all got really, really excited about it. And so we came back, and we've done it again, and we meet together and talk about how we can bring the level of awareness about how to best approach these children to the medical and professional world that actually treats them around the country and actually around the world. So we've got representatives from Canada. I think knowing the Popsicle moms, they'll be international in no time. But it's been a really remarkable, energetic group that they've assembled of not only the professionals, but moms, other doctors from the Arizona region, and other professionals from throughout the country who all have a passion for caring for this group of children. And it's really been remarkable to me to watch their selflessness in this process, their energy, and their ability to pull people together for this common cause of identifying the way to move forward to take best care of these kids and these families. And I can tell you that in many of our very, very busy professional lives, we get a lot of requests to do a lot of things. But when the Popsicle moms call us, it really is one of the most rewarding things we can do, because what you're watching is a group that does this not about themselves, not like a lot of organizations that it seems like they're more interested in fundraising for salaries than to actually do good things. But it's absolutely amazing on the shoestring budget that Popsicle has, what they've been able to accomplish so far. That's truly impacting the way that we approach these kids. It's impacting the families because they're providing education, not only to the professionals, but to the families about what's available and how they can approach things. And I think over the next decade, I expect Popsicle is going to be a leader in reshaping the way that our medical community and our social communities help these families and children.
In my experience, children with developmental disabilities and complex medical issues are a smaller group of babies, and they don't often get the kinds of attention and the kinds of professional supports that are so necessary for these babies and their families to thrive and develop. What I've also seen is that parents come with a passion and an ability to communicate some of these needs in a much more articulate and compassionate way than many times we see from other professionals. I've seen that parents can move mountains to get things to happen and to get people to pay attention to the real issues that need to be addressed. Because Popsicle has this group of founding mothers who are so dedicated to this and who have been so effective in drawing together national experts in a way that contributes in a very high quality way to thinking about how do we best organize services and supports for babies and families, I believe that they're going to be able to be the most effective change agents that we can possibly have, not only on a local level, but also on a national level.
The group of moms who have gotten together, they call themselves the Founding Mothers, which is a wonderful term, to create the Popsicle group, are just an incredible group of women. And I've had the pleasure and the privilege of working with a number of them and their children. And as we have done this work together, the moms in the Popsicle group really felt like they were having to go all over the country in order to get the kinds of assessments and the kinds of services that they needed for their children. And they came together to really try to figure out how do we get those services into our community, and how do we begin to look at a multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary approach as being the best practice for children who have feeding difficulties. And in that process, they asked me to come and be a part of a national collaboration team in order to do that. And from the Popsicle group, what we have been able to do and are really looking at doing is bringing some of the best minds in the country together. People who have been studying this area for 20, 30 years, working with these kids, working with these families, to try to help identify how can we provide the best services possible to kids across this country, and to take it globally. Because we know that feeding issues exist around the world, and that what we need to do is be able to reach out and educate people as to why children don't eat. We need to take the blame factor out of that. We need to help people look at children who don't eat from a very broad perspective. And the Popsicle group really is working to create educational functions where people can learn about why kids don't eat, as well as how do we help make sure that these children are getting identified early. Ideally, we would like to see kids who have feeding difficulties identified and in treatment before the age of 3. We would love to see them before the age of 1. What we know is that it takes the typically developing child 2 years to learn how to eat. It doesn't just automatically happen, it's a process. And ideally, we want to be able to figure out early on those children who are struggling in that normal developmental time period with eating, figure out where they're getting tripped up, back them up to the place where they're off track developmentally, and get them back on track as quickly as possible, so that by the end of that 2-year time period, they've learned how to eat. After that 2-year developmental time period, the child has learned all sorts of avoidance behaviors for not engaging in a task that isn't working for them. And the older the child gets, after they've met all their developmental milestones for eating, who are still not eating, the more difficult it is to help them learn how to do this task. It can be done. We see children all the way up to 21 years of age, but it gets more and more difficult the older and older a child gets. because not only are we past the normal developmental time window for learning how to eat and gaining those skills, but the older we get, the more beliefs we develop about why we're not eating. Why isn't our body working correctly? Why do we eat differently than our peers? I don't eat green food. I don't eat that food because it's my parents' food. I don't eat that food because it's my brother's food. And the older we get, the more those beliefs can get in the way. So if we can get children when they're young and still within that normal developmental time window, it becomes much easier to address the process, the problem and the process. And one of the focuses that I have within the Popsicle group and why I enjoy so much working with them is because they are really looking to identify those children as early as possible and to get them back on the normal developmental trajectory as early as possible.
I want to commend the founding mothers for taking the initiative in requesting to work with the experts and to make this tool that has been developed in the meantime their own, so that they can take it to the healthcare professional in stating in their own ways what their needs are. There is no doubt in my mind that this new assessment that has been developed, or this screening tool, will lead to a sea change in the practice of feeding care for these children, because it is stakeholder initiated, and so we will meet these needs more individually and in a more effective way. We're very proud of these founding mothers, and we commend you for your initiative.
The development of this web tool through the Popsicle organization, with a number of us as consultants, has the potential for helping parents understand, first of all, where their child may fit in light of some so-called typical milestones, and then by being able to go through a simple series of questions in their own homes or wherever it's the easiest for them with a web-based tool, to then not only get some of their questions answered, but also to get a little bit of information about what the expectations are within a given range of age and development, to then be able to have even more meaningful conversations with their pediatricians, who are key people in the community to work with parents and their young infants particularly, and help to facilitate the best care possible. Because it's really done initially, and in a sense over the longer term, with the parents and their primary physicians, which may be a pediatrician, may be a family practice physician, or even some other specialist, so that parents have the affirmation for their own initiation and advocacy for their baby and for their child, and then to give the pediatricians or the other physicians some of the information that will also be helpful to them, because they don't have necessarily extensive knowledge in these very specialized areas as well. I think it has the potential for being a very powerful parent tool, as well as allowing for us to gain further information ourselves and really be able to identify the broad scope of what some of these infants and their families are really going through.